X cubed minus 1, a seemingly simple binomial expression in algebra. Factoring this expression had always puzzled me, though. It does not follow the regular steps that I was accustomed to, and so I froze every time that problem showed up on a test or a quiz. It was really a simple problem, but my mind just could not calm down and think clearly. But this one math problem in particular carries a deeper significance to me. So ever since that one test in Dr. Waddington's Algebra 2 class, the idea of factoring that single expression, x cubed minus 1, brings confusion, extreme hopelessness, fear for my life, and incredibly painful memories. Yeah, thanks, Dr. Waddington. But before I continue on my passionate terror of a math problem, let me give you some insight on my situation. It all started one ordinary day in the 8th grade. Our class was having a shooter on campus lockdown where everyone sits in the corner of a dark classroom and stays absolutely quiet. Then, unexpectedly, nausea hit. I grabbed the nearest trash can and threw up as quietly as possible. I rarely have ever felt so sick, and all the symptoms came in a 15-minute period. My head was throbbing massively. I rushed to the infirmary in a haze as soon as the drill ended. The nurse saw that my eyes were completely dilated and unresponsive to changes in light. She became very worried and called my mom immediately. From there, I was sent straight to the hospital and received an MRI of my brain. I was so confused. I only threw up. I expected just some Pepto-Bismol, not a hospital visit. It was all too much to take, so I tried to fall asleep and forget about all of it. The waiting period in that barren room felt like 2 days. I could only stare at the walls in silence, pondering the diagnosis. The doctor could have entered and said, "You're fine. Just take this Tylenol and you'll feel better tomorrow." Or, "You have about a week to live." I was completely cut off from the world. Finally, about an hour later, my dad walked in the room. He grabbed my hand tightly, fought back the tears, and softly said, "You have a tumor in the middle of your brain, son." I felt like time stopped as I attempted to digest the horrific news. A brain tumor? One of those things that kill people? Instantly, I started to cry as I thought the end of my life would come much sooner than expected. But the crying only made my head hurt more. Within 24 hours of my incident in the classroom, I was placed in an operating room. My whole family surrounded the bed and watched the assistants prepare the sharp surgical instruments. As they placed the anesthesia mask on my face, my last thought was, well, at least I've lived an awesome life so far. It can only go up from here. The procedure could only alleviate the pressure that had built up due to the tumor, and the tumor itself would go away with daily radiation treatment. After surgery, once I slowly regained my full consciousness, I developed a more pessimistic mindset. I could only think, why me? Why did my brain have to be sliced in half? I don't do anything wrong. Why do I deserve this? But strangely, over the next couple of days in the hospital, every time these negative thoughts came up, my head would hurt. My brain was so sensitive that even frustrating thoughts brought pain. So I realized I must keep my mind away from stress and pessimism. It was odd how simply looking at the bright side alleviated my pain. All my meals were served bedside, friends and family visited every day, and best of all, I got so many cookies. I'll never forget hearing about a 13-year-old Blake Mary wandering cluelessly by himself around the hospital corridors, holding a giant box of cookies, looking for my room. Once I left the hospital, I still had to come back every day for 6 weeks to receive radiation. For half an hour, they would strap my head down on a cold, hard table with a mask that looked like it was from a horror movie, and I could not move an inch. During this time, I reflected on everything that had happened up to that point, and finally came to peace with it all. Seeing the love I got from family, friends, and people I've never met made me so grateful for the life I have. I would even laugh, oddly, when my hair started falling out as a result of the radiation. I entered high school with a different approach towards life. I became much more shy, quiet, and observant of the world around me. Maybe it was the tons of medication, but I felt like a new person. In middle school, I would be more willing to jump over a desk when the teacher left the room. After the surgery, I would only think of the bruises and broken bones that could result of failure of such an attempt. My cautious lifestyle had brought unneeded anxiety about every aspect of life. Now, this brings back to the math problem that I mentioned earlier. It showed up on a math test the second semester of 9th grade. I was panicking as usual for every math test, thinking, what if you don't finish in time? What if you're not ready to keep up with the rest of the class? What if this is the start of a downward slope and you never get into a good college and wind up on the street as a homeless person? True, I overreacted a bit, but I couldn't help it. I progressed about halfway through the test when something peculiar started happening. My entire arm would jerk randomly when I tried to solve a problem and write the answers. Then I saw that dreaded question on the test. Factor x cubed minus 1. I forgot to study that problem and blanked out. Then immediately, I blacked out. The next thing I could remember was being on the floor outside the chapel classrooms. My vision was blurred, but I could see paramedics rushing all around me. As they put me on a stretcher, I could only focus on my terrible headache. It felt like I had been mercilessly banging my head on a wall, like a crazy person. Well, later, I discovered that is exactly what I'd been doing. I had my first seizure, and it was not fun. Now, once again in a hospital bed, the confusion and fear came back. Why would this happen if they already cured me? Well, much later, the doctor found that the seizure was partially induced by anxiety. This was a hard concept to absorb. The nervous and unsettled way I approached that problem contributed to an uncontrollable medley of spasms in my entire body. So once again, I had to just stop, reflect on everything that had happened up to that point, and find a solution to it all. I concluded that a calm and optimistic approach towards life would allow me to handle adversity. On the outside, this philosophy makes me look like I'm in slow motion sometimes, but I'm still working on that. Now, when I tell people I had a brain tumor, they get a little stunned or unsure whether I'm comfortable talking about it. Well, that horrible little thing has shaped the way I live life. It forced me to live as stress-free as possible and perceive everything optimistically. I never have a problem talking about the tumor and its effects. It already left a hole in my brain, and I've accepted that. Everyone around me may say that I move at the speed of a sloth, and I admit I probably do, but that is just my way of enjoying every moment. To this day, I wake up every morning knowing that each day is a blessing. So, TMI, life can be pretty hard and unfair. Relax. Take it one step at a time. I'm not saying slack off, but do not make your life harder than it really is. Take time to reflect every once in a while. I know my situation is unique, and your stresses will not have the same effect as mine will. But what I hope you can all relate to is the importance of letting the small stuff go. There is no guarantee of life. You can't exchange it for a new or better one. So why waste it focusing on the bad instead of celebrating what is good? Oh yeah, and by the way, x cubed minus 1 in its factored form is x minus 1 times x squared plus x plus 1. Thank you.